Hello and welcome to another episode of the Feather on Football podcast with me, Luke Feather. Today I'm joined with George Newell and Anthony Stonelake. How are we doing, lads?
Good, mate. Good, mate.
Good. Right, today we're going to be doing our Premier League team of the season, but with a slight twist. Added stipulation, you're only allowed one player per team. So, for example, if you had Van Dijk, you're not allowed Sadio Mane in your team, etc. So, without further ado, who wants to start?
We'll start with the goalkeepers.
Yeah, start with the goalkeepers. Anthony,
Well, I've gone for Dean Henderson from Sheffield United because, he's been the second best goalkeeper in the league this season. I could have picked Alisson, but unfortunately I've got a Liverpool player elsewhere.
Of course. I think with Henderson, it's only a matter of time for his England number one. Don't know about you guys. I think the competition with my pick, Nick Pope from Burnley. I think the competition with him this season. I think Pickford, it's time for him to step down, to be honest. I saw Nick Pope's got 13 clean sheets. He's only second in the league behind Alisson.
That's Alisson who missed 3 months of the season.
I know, yeah. Could have had Adrian in there then. But George.
I've gone for Nick Pope as well. As you said, second most clean sheets in the league. But if you think sort of how many more shots he's going to face than someone like Alisson or Edison, it's a pretty impressive stat. I think 6'5", big frame, built a goal. I think everyone sort of seems to be saying Henderson or Pickford, but I think Pope sort of overlooked a little bit.
So would you go for Henderson or Pope if you were Gareth Southgate?
I think just with the way Southgate wants to play, I'd probably still go Pickford just because he's better with his feet. And if it's a big game, Henderson's got that World Cup. Pickford's got that World Cup experience.
It's true, but maybe I'm old fashioned, but I'd prefer my goalkeeper to be a goalkeeper for a footballer.
Yeah, I know what you mean. But Southgate's just always talked about the way he wants to play and stuff. And I think
Pickford's decision making is nowhere near good enough, though. Like the other day, you're watching him play, and he's got 4 or 5 players running ahead trying to counter attack, and he picks out Bernard. And Gary Neville said it right on commentary. Bernard was the shortest player on the pitch, and he's the one who decided to pick out.
Yeah,
I just think if the Euros had been this year as planned, you can't really start Henderson who hasn't played a game.
Yeah, like you say, I think with the Euros being pushed back a year, I think that does favour Dean Henderson particularly. Maybe if he goes back to Man United as well, there's obviously talk of that. But even if he just stays at Sheffield United and has another solid season, then I think he's probably going to be knocking the door down next season.
Yeah.
Right, so we'll move on to the right back. George, do you want to start?
I've gone Ricardo Pereira at Leicester fullback. I think pretty easy one, to be honest. Most tackles in the league. I think everyone talks about Trent's attacking, Wan-Bissaka's defending. I think this guy is probably the most complete fullback in the league. So.
I think that's a good shout. And since the restart, he's been injured, hasn't he? And I think and Leicester have obviously suffered from a bit of a drop off in form. It's Justin that they've got at right back. He looks like a decent prospect, but he's just
not
big boots to fill.
Level. Yeah.
Anthony, who have you gone for?
I've gone for Aaron Wan-Bissaka.
Me too.
As someone who will sit here and sing the praises of Trent Alexander-Arnold until the sun goes down, this hurts me to put Wan-Bissaka in this team. But there's no denying what kind of defender that he is, and he is a phenomenal defender. His attacking side may not be world-class, but he is the best defensive right-back in the league.
I still think Wan-Bissaka is getting there, going forward, because people...
Yeah,
the comparisons with the Man United-Liverpool thing, the comparisons are always going to be there of Alexander-Arnold. And Alexander-Arnold is the best attacking fullback in the league. Like, no doubt about that for me. But Wan-Bissaka has been chipping in with a few assists. He's dangerous going forward. He can beat a man and still get a ball into the box. So I think Wan-Bissaka going forward is slightly underrated.
Yeah, but that's the same thing that Trent is very underrated defensively.
That's a fair point. Although I will say he has got the best centre back in the world next to him. So his defence, I'm not saying that he can't defend, because obviously he can. He wouldn't be playing for the league champions if he couldn't defend. But with the way Liverpool's set up, that he's
Virgil van Dijk plays on the other side. Joe Gomez is the one next to him.
All right, okay. All right, maybe a player like Fabinho covering the spaces then. I'm not saying that he can't defend, obviously, but he works well in their system, in their attacking fullback system. Okay. So left back, Anthony, do you want to start?
Well, right. Initially, I had Jamal Lewis here, but I've literally changed my mind in the last 10 minutes. And I've got Lucas Digne from Everton.
Yeah, I have as well.
And again, I find myself saying he's the second best in the league behind Andy Robertson. And
you're loving this, aren't you?
Oh, this is my favourite thing. Can we do this every week?
Oh yeah, of course.
Yeah, but he's probably Everton's best player this season as well, which just makes him a shoo-in for this side.
I would agree with that, but obviously with the stipulations of this, I have got another Everton player in my team, so I couldn't put him in. I've gone with my Sheffield United player, Ender Stevens. I think I know Sheffield United play with a 5 at the back, 3 at the back, however you see it. But at wing back, I think he's just been solid this season. He's one of their most dangerous attacking outlets, especially with the way that they play, with Wilder's overlapping, underlapping, wide centre backs. I think he's been linking up well with Jack O'Connell down the left hand side. He's looked dangerous all season, and I think he's probably been one of the top five left backs in the league for me this year.
Yeah, he's a tidy player. Another solid bit of business by Villa letting him go. But I've gone with Digne as well. Anyone who comes from PSG and Barcelona can obviously play. 6 assists this season, which doesn't sound like loads, but then like you look at the people on 7, it's Firmino, David Silva, Bernardo Silva, and Mane. So
it's not bad company, is it?
Yeah. You can obviously, I think Everton have got have scored the most set pieces in the league.
Yeah, he's got a good delivery on him.
Yeah, and he's a big part of it. Yeah.
All right, so 2 for Digne and Ender Stevens there. Centre backs. I'm going to throw a name out there. This is my Liverpool player, a pretty obvious one, but Van Dijk. I think that, I don't think there's a lot more that needs to be said about Van Dijk, to be honest. Everyone knows his quality. He's probably, for me, he's the best centre back in the world. You don't finish second in a Ballon d'Or behind Lionel Messi for no reason. What more needs to be said?
Yeah, I could sit here and wax lyrical about Virgil van Dijk all day long, but the real discussion needs to sort of turn to whether or not he's one of the greatest defenders ever in the Premier League now. And from my perspective, a lot of people are quick to say no because he's still playing.
Yeah.
Whereas players like Rio Ferdinand, Nemanja Vidic, even Sol Campbell, players like that, when they were playing, nobody stood back and went, "Oh, you're one of the best defenders of all time."
I think another thing that sort of goes against him is the fact that I know for how good he is and for how big an impact he's had on Liverpool, he's 29 now, and this is his second full season at Liverpool. So he's only really been at the top level for this his second year. When you look at players like John Terry, did it for 10 plus years, Rio Ferdinand, Nemanja Vidic, 10 plus years company. So I think that's one thing letting him down, to be honest. But if you look at his attributes, he's got everything. He's quick, he's good on the ball, he can pass, he wins everything in the air. So anyway, which centre backs have you two gone for?
I've gone for Van Dijk as well. I think, as you were saying, he just keeps the majority of Liverpool's chances come through the fullbacks, and they get that freedom because of Van Dijk. The second one is a bit of a bold shout, but I've gone for Gary Cahill. Just a really good bit of business getting him on a free, I think. No one really talking about Palace this year, but with the budget they have, they're not going to be like a Europa League team. But they've never looked like going down either. I think he's a big part of that. Very solid defensive side.
I always think for a team like Palace, or they're in that sort of category with a team like Newcastle, or not so much Burnley because they've had a decent year, but they're in that sort of category where it's almost a good thing if no one talks about you.
Yeah,
Because at the beginning, you'd be thinking, oh, maybe we could be going down, could be in a relegation battle.
Yeah.
But if no one's really saying much about it, it just means you're steadily going along.
Yeah,
really.
I think they are the sort of forgotten team of the year. Really, I think they're not just that one-man team with a higher. A bit more.
Anthony, who have you gone for?
My second centre half, obviously I've picked Van Dijk, but my second centre half is Lewis Dunk.
Lewis Dunk.
I think for the kind of football that Brighton play, that Graham Potter tries to play with Brighton, he's the perfect centre half for them. And just in the same way Van Dijk allows Liverpool to play the way Liverpool play, I think Lewis Dunk does that for Brighton as well.
Yeah, very good shout. I've gone for Soyuncu at Leicester.
Good shout.
Yeah, good shout.
I think a lot of people said about Leicester when we sold Maguire, he was sort of the main man in their defence, really. Him and Johnny Evans were just starting to strike up a bit of a partnership. Soyuncu, I know he signed last season, but he didn't really get much game time because of Maguire. He stepped in this year, and I'd argue he's probably been better than Maguire this season.
Yeah, I'd agree with
that. He's got 12 clean sheets in the league, which is solid. His averages 4.5 clearances per game. He's an absolute beast in the air. He's one of the strongest centre-backs in the league. I just think it was a great bit of business from Leicester, to be honest, to get 80 million for Maguire and then have Soyuncu ready waiting in the ranks. So we'll move on to the midfield. For me, probably the easiest pick in the whole team for me. I think I'd be surprised if you two don't have the best player in the league in your team as well.
Yeah,
it's De Bruyne.
Yeah, easily.
I think he's in the Van Dijk category of what more is there to be said about him. For me, he's the best midfielder in the world. In current form, he could be maybe the best player in the world as well, to be honest.
Yeah, possibly. I think yeah, he's just that one thing he's got over Van Dijk. He's just been doing it for a couple more seasons where now you're looking like he's looking at being like a Premier League great. But yeah, both like the first two names I had in.
So, as Anthony raised with Van Dijk earlier, would you put? I mean, maybe not. Would you put? But where does he rank, along with your Steven Gerrards, your Paul Scholes, your Frank Lampard, your Yaya Torres, maybe in the best midfielders of all time?
I think it's very, very hard to compare midfielders, especially when they bring such different things to a football team. Like, the reason Paul Scholes versus Gerrard and Lampard is a really hard discussion to make is because Paul Scholes is a completely different player to Gerrard and Lampard, and that's the same for De Bruyne. De Bruyne is just a completely different player. He's one of the best assisting midfielders I have ever seen.
He sees passes. He sees passes, but no one else can see.
But not only that, the amount of space that he creates with his movement is the same kind of thing that Roberto Firmino does. And he does it so well that the opposition doesn't even notice that he's doing it. So that makes him so hard to track. You can barely see the space that he's made. But all it takes is the little tiny bit of space for somebody to make a run like Aguero, who's so clever with his runs. Just De Bruyne's football IQ is like higher than any other footballer I've ever seen.
And just sticking with De Bruyne for a second, because obviously there's the hanging over Man City at the minute is the potential Champions League ban. So for a player like Kevin De Bruyne, I think he's 29 years old now. If this 2-year ban goes through, he won't be playing Champions League football again until he's 31 if he stays at Man City. So do you think if the Champions League ban is upheld and they've got a 2-year ban, do you think he'll leave?
I'd take him at Liverpool, you know.
Oh, I'm sure you would. I don't think there's any fan in the world that wouldn't take Kevin De Bruyne. But
I'm not sure if you're at City though, you're there to win the Champions League. If you know what I mean. Obviously, playing in it or winning it is a different thing, but that they haven't got any sort of history with that competition.
Exactly. I think that's the one thing that Man City want now, because they've won 4 Premier Leagues since the takeover. They've won everything. They absolutely clean up the domestic competitions. I think the Champions League is like Chelsea were with Abramovich, just chasing the Champions League constantly. I think that's going to be Man City now.
Yeah, I don't see that same attachment to it with the fans and stuff, but for whatever reason.
With City fans, they have this massive gripe with UEFA anyway, so I'm not sure City fans are as desperate for it as other sets of fans.
But when you bring in a manager like Pep, who, in my eyes, was brought in not only to win back the title, which he did, you're bringing in a manager like that who has won 2 Champions Leagues already. For me, there's only one logical next step up. They need to win the Champions League, and I'd probably make them second favourites for this year's, behind Bayern, to be honest. But anyway, moving on from probably the easiest pick of the whole team. Anthony, who's your second midfielder?
I've gone for Ruben Neves from Wolves.
Yeah, solid shout.
If you look statistically, he's probably not the best midfielder in the league, but he's another one of those players that adds so much to the team when he's on the pitch, and that the team looks completely different when he's not there. And he just is he's the glue that holds Wolves' sort of midfield together, and he's just so good at connecting the defence to the midfield for Wolves that it just keeps their sort of attacking, flowing football going.
Agreed. He sort of offers the balance to the team, doesn't he? So, George, who have you gone for?
I've gone for Kante as like my holding midfielder. Pretty straightforward one. Kind of picks himself as well. Might not be getting talked about as much this season, but he's still one of the best holding midfielders in the world. And I don't think Chelsea have got a lot of standout players. I think he's one of those one of 2 or 3 that's world class. I think.
It's interesting that you put Kante in the team, because this season more than ever he's struggled with injuries. I think he's missed half the games for injury. He's had a bit of stick, not so much stick, but he's been the topic of discussion for 2 years now, since Sarri come in, about what's his best position. Obviously, under Sarri, he was playing ahead of Jorginho, further up the pitch than Jorginho, and Lampard's come in and done the exact same thing for most of the season, and it's not really been talked about as much.
Yeah, I just feel like, I think he's still played 22 games or something. I just think in those big games, he's that sort of player you want. But I was also looking at Moutinho for Wolves, who's been another very tidy player for them. But I didn't want to pick a Wolves player over Kante. Really.
Yeah. So you've gone for Kante. I've actually gone for Kovacic as my Chelsea player in this team.
Oh wow! I've gone for Mason Mount here.
Mason. Oh well, that says it all about Chelsea's midfield, then, doesn't it? But no, with Kovacic, for me, he's just been Chelsea's best player this season, far and away. I think in his first season, he got a little. It was a little bit underwhelming. Him and Ross Barkley were sort of rotating, but this year, I just think he's been Chelsea's most consistent performer.
Yeah,
and,
I would have liked to put him in. It's just as a holding midfielder, I wasn't too sure. Just getting that balance. But.
Yeah, this is always the problem I have when I'm picking a team of the season. It's about, I always end up with just 3 midfielders. I never have a holding midfielder.
Yeah.
And as we'll see with my strikers in a minute. But yeah, I just think Kovacic he's been the glue, like you were saying about Ruben Neves. He's been the perfect link between the defence, the midfield, and then moving up the pitch as well. I think he carries the ball so well. He's got some of the best dribbling stats in the league. I just think he had to be in the team. And you've gone for Mason Mount, Anthony?
Yes, I have. I think when it comes to end product of Chelsea's midfield, he's probably the best on there. He's got the most goals out of any of the Chelsea midfielders, possibly the most assists. I know he's got 4 or 5 there. But from right at the start of the season, Mason Mount has really, really impressed me as a player who's come into the team not been a major star before and has made a name for himself this season. And like I said, I just think that out of any of the Chelsea midfield, he's the one that's really stood out to me.
I think one thing that Lampard has been keen to highlight is his off the ball work as well. Because if you watch Mount, a lot of the team's pressing starts with him. So he's sort of the trigger for the press. And I think he covers so much ground and he works so hard for the team. I know he's played a couple of different positions this season, whether it's been in like a number 10 or a wide or out on the left-hand side or even in centre midfield. But I think the one thing that stuck with him is his work rate all season. So, third midfielder. I'll start with this one. I think you'll be happy with this one, George. I've gone for Jack Grealish.
Yeah, bang on. Yeah.
I think, although his stats aren't unbelievable in terms of goals and assists, he's got 7 and 6, which is a good return for a relegation battling team. But it's just so much more than goals and assists for me. Every time I've watched Villa this season, everything just seems to go through him. And if he's playing well, the team tends to play well. But if he's not ticking, then the team struggles.
Yeah, I agree. Most goal contributions by an English midfielder this season. Only Kevin De Bruyne's created more chances than him. He used Villa at the minute, and if I would fully understand if he left, he's done that much for us. I wouldn't even be annoyed, to be honest. But
so if Villa, I know things are looking a little bit bleak for you at the minute, looking at the league table.
Yeah.
Sorry to mention that, but
very.
if you were to go down, how worried are you about Grealish?
Not. If we go down, he goes. I've accepted that. I mean, he's far too good to be playing in the Championship. But I think we're a pretty young side. I think there's enough from what I've seen to make me think we'll come back up. When we went down 3 years ago, we were dire. We got 17 points, and there was nothing about the team that gave me any confidence. Whereas now, I think we could sell Grealish and maybe McGinn, get over 100 million for the pair of them, build with that, and then I think I'd back us from straight back up.
I think I've spoke to you about this before, actually, George. But you mentioned a few years ago when you came down, you had Remy Gard was he the manager at the time, and you got through about
Briefly,
3 or 4 managers that season.
Yeah.
But this season and last season, of course, you got Dean Smith, and you just seem to have a sense of direction and a way you want to play, and you haven't chopped and changed the manager, which I think is good because I think it sets you in good stand for next season rather than going, oh, we could go down, we'll get Sam Allardyce in or something like that.
Yeah. It's just. Yeah, there's been such a better feel about the club. You turn up when right away from Paul Lambert in 2012 through to Steve Bruce in 2016, 17. You turn up and you're not really knowing how Villa are going to play. And since you've got Dean Smith back, you've got Dean Smith in, who sticks to these values of how he wants to play, but also being a Villa fan, Grealish as captain of a Villa fan. There's just so much more identity about the club. Just even if the results aren't being reflected yet, it's a much better sort of environment.
Absolutely. Anthony, who's your third midfielder?
Oh, you've had my 3. It's Mount, KDB, and
sorry, of course. George, have we had yours?
Yeah. Grealish, Kante, and De Bruyne.
All right. So moving on to the strikers. Anthony?
For me, these were some of the easiest picks to make because they've all been phenomenal. And the first one I'll go for is Danny Ings.
Yep, same.
I don't think anybody really expected him to have the season that he's had, but what a season it's been for him. He's brought a life and soul to this Southampton side that was not really present before this season. And he has really, really put the team on their back.
That's the thing with Southampton. I mean, obviously, when they first got promoted, and they had the team they had then with Lallana, Lambert, Lovren, all these Liverpool players. And they every season they somehow manage to sell all their best players and then replace them, and then eventually they had a team with Mane, Liverpool player, Tadic, Graziano Pelle. They just managed to keep replacing all these players, and then it just started to go a bit downhill. And I was worried for them, especially after they lost 9-0 to Leicester. I thought they were dead and buried. But yeah, like you say, Danny Ings has been smashing them in. Someone that I can see at Leicester, to be honest. I think Vardy's not getting any younger. I think Danny Ings could end up at Leicester at some point.
Yeah, it's a good shout.
Well, Danny Ings himself isn't that young anymore.
I think he's 27. So
he's 27.
He's got 6 years on Vardy. I know Vardy isn't really showing any signs of slowing down, but the way he plays with such intensity, it's going to happen in the next couple of seasons. It's inevitable. Yeah, George, who's your first striker?
Well, I've tried to go with 2 genuine wingers and then a striker. So my right winger, I've gone for Greenwood, more sort of on the player that he can become. But 8 goals this season, played 29 games, but only 7 of them were start. I think he's a much better player than Rashford was at that age. And I'd try not to hype up young England players too much, because seeing so many not fulfill their potential. But with him and people like Foden, they just look, they can do world class.
I agree with that. I think Greenwood is a genuine talent. Like when I've watched players in the past, especially coming through at United, I've always been sort of, really, are you really going to hype him up to be that kind of thing that he's not? Like, I've seen players like Federico Makeda come through at United and just been like, no, just don't go there. But with Greenwood, I think there's a genuine, a world-class eye for goal. And that's what he's got. As long as he can build everything else around his game to be that level, then he'll go on to be one of the best forwards in the game.
He's just a natural finisher from what I've seen of him.
He looks...
Sorry, go on.
He looks more of like a natural... I'll put him at right wing, but he looks more of a natural striker than Rashford, I think.
I saw... I can't remember who it was. It was a Man United player. They said in training, he trained with the first team for a few weeks before they even found out if he was left-footed or right-footed. I think that speaks volumes of him. Like he would take a free kick with his right foot and then go and take penalties with his left foot, like it was nothing. And it reflects in games. The other day against Bournemouth, I think he scored one with his left foot, and then went the other way, took it past a couple of players and scored one with his right foot. So I'm still trying to work it out, to be honest. But yeah, good shout. So 2 for Ings, 1 for Greenwood. Anthony, who's your second striker?
We've mentioned him already, but it's Jamie Vardy.
Yeah.
I think as someone who is touted as a nailed-on one-season wonder, he's doing a pretty decent job. And he's just surpassed 100 Premier League goals, and I don't think anybody saw that coming.
Yeah.
From his time at Fleetwood, he's now here to being arguably one of the Premier League's best ever strikers, because not many people get over 100 goals. It just doesn't happen that often.
In the time frame he's done it as well.
Exactly.
Yeah, he didn't come to a Premier League until he must have been about 26 or 27.
Maybe a little bit older, yeah.
I think he was still playing non-league football when he was about 25 or 24.
Yeah. There's that picture of Nigel Pearson as Leicester manager, and he's got Vardy and Kane on the bench, and they're losing like 2-0.
Oh, madness! Yeah.
He scored 22 goals this season. He's 2 off his best Premier League season. Like, he's just probably one of the first names on this team sheet, because I don't know how he keeps up this intensity at 33, but he just does it.
I read his book a while ago, and he said his pre-game ritual is to wake up on the day of the game, have 2 double espressos. He'll get to the ground, he'll have a cheese and ham omelette, another double espresso, a can of Red Bull, another double espresso, and just before the game, he'll have another can of Red Bull. So there's the secret.
That is how he plays as well.
Yeah. He says he sits there in the changing room, headphones on, heavy metal, gets himself psyched up. It's just, you can picture it, can't you, just from watching him play?
Yeah, easily, yeah.
Yeah, to borrow a phrase from Jurgen Klopp, he really does play heavy metal football.
Yeah.
And that really doesn't shock me that that's his kind of preparation for a game.
So moving on. George, who's your second striker?
I've gone for Aubameyang. I think the reason I didn't go for Vardy, he started the season really well, and then he just sort of slowed up a little bit, and it's just gave people chance to catch up. I think, but still a special player. But I think Arsenal's form under Emery was almost relegation form if you take out Aubameyang's goals. It's a shame it's took him this long to come to the Premier League, really, because he's genuinely world-class player.
I don't like using the phrase because it's disrespectful to players at a top level, but Arsenal have been a little bit of a one-man team for most of the season. With, like you say, without Aubameyang's goals, where would they be? It just makes you think where they could have been if they had Aubameyang a bit earlier, when they still had the foundations of a decent team. But yeah, I think Aubameyang had to be in the team. He's played so much of a season out wide as well.
And he can score like any kind of goal. Really, there's no real weakness in his game. Like, I think Aguero deserves a mention just because he does it every year. But Aubameyang this year have really stood out.
Yeah, well, I've got Aubameyang as my third forward here. And I think the most telling part of this and the whole system at Arsenal is the fact that this season Aubameyang's only got 13.8 expected goals, whereas last season he had 20.7. That just goes to show that he is the thing that's creating these goals for Arsenal. There's nothing coming from behind him. Guendouzi is an okay talent, but he's not creating much for Aubameyang. Lacazette isn't playing to the level that Lacazette should be. The name Alexandre Lacazette carries a weight that isn't equal to his performances this season, and Aubameyang is just making things happen for Arsenal.
Agreed. And one thing that could be good news for Arsenal, again, like you said about Greenwood, not getting overhyped with young players too soon, but Saka coming through looks like the real deal for me.
Yeah, looks talent, definitely.
I saw that only in all competitions in England this season, only Alexander-Arnold and Kevin De Bruyne have more assists than him. It's not bad company to be in for an 18-year-old. Just signed a new deal as well.
I watched, that was a great bit of business, tying him down to the contract. I watched their game against Wolves the other day, and it was only his first Premier League goal, but he took it so well, just like half volley, just made a half chance look really easy. Very promising.
If we're talking about first Premier League goals, can I just say that Curtis Jones is a proper talent as well?
Yeah, I would say that. Yeah, was it him that scored the goal against Everton in the cup?
Yeah, in the FA Cup, the worldie that
Yeah, it's nice to see young players coming through at Liverpool because, all right, I know with Alexander-Arnold, but compared to say a Chelsea this season or a Man United of past seasons or even an Arsenal, not that many Liverpool players come to mind. Maybe I'm wrong and I'm missing a few.
You've got, at the minute you've got Curtis Jones, Ryan Brewster, Harvey Elliott, Neco Williams. Those are the four biggest talents we've got coming through at the minute. And I think 3 or 4 of them will play a big part in the rotation of the team next year. And Ryan Brewster will go on loan to Swansea again.
So just sticking with Williams, how do you see his rotation coming in? Do you think he'll eventually start? And what does that mean for Alexander-Arnold? Do you think he'll be pushed forward or...?
I've had this debate several times, and I think Jordan Henderson's just turned 30. I think there'll come a time where it'll be phased to be Alexander-Arnold playing in that position Henderson plays now on the right-hand side of our midfield 3 with Neco Williams in at the right back.
Okay.
Do you not think Trent gives the ball away too much though? Right back as it is, I think he'll get less time on the ball in midfield.
I think he'd have more cover from Fabinho in the midfield. Fabinho's only 24.
Yeah.
He'll sit there, and Trent will, with age, become more experienced at holding the ball. That's just something that happens to all footballers. And being in that midfield, I think, with the more confidence of having Fabinho behind him rather than having to track back to help him out, that'll give him the confidence to hold onto the ball better.
Okay, yeah.
And third striker or winger, George?
Lacazette yeah, so left wing I've gone for Son. Missed a couple of games for injury. Probably would have missed the rest of the season had it not been for lockdown. But 9 goals and 9 assists in 25 games. Don't think you can really argue with that. I think if he was English, we'd probably talk about him a lot more. But because he's from South Korea, maybe we don't pay as much attention to him as we should. Their best player after Kane, really. I think.
And he's had to step up at times this season as well, when obviously Kane's missed a lot of the season through injury. So eyes turn to your Dele Allis, your Heung-min Sons, Lucas Moura. I would agree he's probably their second best player after Kane.
Yeah, there's an argument that they're a better team without Kane because he is a little bit selfish, Kane. But yeah, every time Kane's been injured, Son stepped up.
There is that argument, but for me, it's like the Champions League final against Liverpool. Kane was injured in the run-up to that game, I think, and he didn't play in the semi-final against Ajax. Yeah. And then Lucas Moura scored a hat-trick in the semi and then didn't play in the final. But for me, Kane's, when he's fit, is a top 3-4 striker in the world. You don't leave him on your bench.
No, the thing is that Kane really didn't fit what Poch wanted to do with a football team. Harry Kane is someone you stick up front and you get the ball to him. Yeah. Whereas Lucas Moura was that player. And I think Spurs starting Kane ahead of Moura in the Champions League final is what really won it for Liverpool in the end. You can say about us getting the penalty in the first minute or whatever, but the fact that Spurs didn't start with a player that's going to break lines and try and get in behind our defence is the reason that we won that final.
Interesting. So, Anthony, who's your third striker?
Again, mine's Aubameyang, Vardy and Ings.
Oh, apologies. One player that I'd want to point out is Calvert-Lewin at Everton.
Yeah.
Maybe,
very nice player,
maybe a slightly left field shout. He doesn't really get talked about as much, with England having with so many options up front coming through. I think Calvert-Lewin is still only 23 years old. He's sort of established himself as Everton's go-to number 9. He's got 13 goals in the league this season. I think he's probably the closest thing that they've ever come to replacing Lukaku in terms of his output and what he does for the team. So, and Ancelotti seems to trust him, and if Ancelotti can trust him, then it says a lot.
I think he's a lot more than a goal scorer as well. I can say he works really hard and he passes the ball a lot more than a lot of strikers. I think him and Richarlison up front could be really dangerous, and with Ancelotti always organised with good defence, I think they could be onto things.
I'm really looking forward to watching Everton next season. I've not said that for a long time, to be honest.
Yeah.
Sorry, Anthony. I am looking forward to seeing Everton next season under arguably one of the best managers of all time, 3-time Champions League winner. I know recruitment for a lot of teams this summer is going to be maybe not as much as it would be because of the COVID situation, but I'd love to see who Ancelotti brings in and how we can sort of rebuild this Everton team that's just been lacking for a long time now.
I think when Andre Gomez back fully fit as well, he was fantastic before his injury. I think that was a massive blow. But yeah, they've got that new stadium coming as well. They've got big plans. I mean, it's going to be a while before they're the biggest team in the city, but if ever. But yeah, they look promising.
Exactly. Exciting times for Everton.
I think for Everton, they need to sort of move away from some of the established players that they've already got. I think it's time for Gylfi Sigurdsson to move away and for them to bring in somebody who's a bit younger and a bit more of a prospect.
Agreed. I don't. Sigurdsson's one of those players where when he plays well, he's very good, and you can sort of look to him to play that killer ball or to score a free kick or whatever. But he just doesn't have his day often enough for me.
And he's Ancelotti doesn't play with the number 10, does he? He plays 4-4-2 traditionally. So where do you fit him in that team?
Exactly. Right. So we all named our teams.
Yeah.
A couple more questions. I'm not giving you any time to think about these ones, but who would you call your your signing of the season?
Yeah, put me on the spot.
That was my plan.
I think I'd maybe still go with Gary Cahill because I put him in my team purely in terms of value for money. Just a free transfer. I think just a really good bit of business. No one else kind of springs to mind. Maybe some Maximan or
another good shout. Yeah,
but yeah, probably between those two.
For me, it's a no-brainer. I know he only signed in January, but he's transformed Man United. It's Bruno Fernandes.
Yeah.
That's probably right.
I mean, I've seen it with Van Dijk at Liverpool, how one signing sort of transformed the team.
Yeah.
But the way Fernandes is just making everything tick for Man United now, and now they've got Greenwood, Martial, Rashford, and Pogba all in the same team together. It's really exciting, and I think next season I think they're nailed on top four, to be honest. Next season, Man United.
Yeah.
It's important to remember that it wasn't just Van Dijk that changed Liverpool, though. Van Dijk helped a lot, but Alisson was the real moment that Liverpool changed.
I agree, but with yeah, okay, it was those two really, because before you were playing a partnership with, was it Lovren and Matip or Ragnar Klavan?
Don't say anything bad about Ragnar Klavan. I'm not going to laugh at it.
And then Karius, obviously, the less about him, the better. Those two signings transformed you as a club, and that is just sort of how I'm seeing Fernandes. He's sort of, I'm not getting carried away too soon, because we've seen it when Pogba had a few good games when he first joined Man United, and we thought that was it. And when Di Maria had a few good games when he first signed, but he just seems to, everything just ticks with him in the team.
I just with United, been watching them recently, and they do look, without meaning to get carried away, they look like genuine title contenders, but for next year. But there's a constant Sancho rumour. I'm not sure. Like, obviously he gets in that team, but I don't know where you play him, because Martial, I think's had enough chance at United. I wouldn't persevere with him anymore, but he's just scored a hat trick, so he's going to be starting. And then where does he fit with Greenwood and Rashford? I don't really know.
The thing is with Martial, he's always had a player in him. It's just if the team plays to his strengths, and when he plays well, he's always got a special moment in him. And he's scored 20 goals this season in all competitions. I think he's got 15 in the league. So I think that's a good enough return. To say he's had a few games out injured as well, and him and Rashford have sort of swapped positions at times throughout the season as well, where one's been playing out on the left and one's been through the middle. But I think him through the middle with Rashford on the left, that's the combination for me.
I think what they really need is a centre half more than anything. I've never been Maguire's biggest fan. Lindelof and Bailly are both kind of injury prone. I like what I saw of Tuanzebe at Villa last year, but he's not at that level yet. But that's where I'd be looking for Man U.
I think I'd sort of agree and disagree, because I do rate Harry Maguire as a centre-back, and I rate Lindelof as a centre-back, but individually. I just think together, there's just no pace there. You can just run at them, run in behind them, and that's their weak spot for me. So I'd probably have Maguire, and not Bailey because he's too injury prone, but someone like Bailey with that sort of
physical pace.
Yeah. And probably the easiest question of the day. Or maybe not. Who's your manager of the season?
Right. Obviously, it's Jurgen Klopp. Obviously. But I want to give plaudits to two other managers, and that's Nuno and Chris Wilder.
Yeah. They were
both have done phenomenal jobs this season, and they deserve endless plaudits for what they've done.
I think I can agree with that. They were the three names that came to my head.
Yeah, I think so. I do still kind of believe that Liverpool overperformed a little bit with the team they've got. I think, and it's
that's the mark of a great manager, though.
Yeah, that's what I mean. I think, like when I went to the Villa game at Villa Park when we were playing Liverpool, and we just couldn't get out, just the relentless press. It's yeah, and that is all Jurgen Klopp.
Yeah, I mean, it's just credit to Klopp that I think we talked about this on the last podcast, Anthony, but with the team you've got, you don't really see too many megastars like you would at Man City, especially in the midfield for me. We've got Jordan Henderson, who has been sort of, for years, he was sort of overlooked and maybe like not seen as the guy for Liverpool. Now he's been captain, he's won the Premier League with them, he's talks of player of the season.
Yeah.
And someone like Gini Wijnaldum, who got relegated with Newcastle and then signed and has done bits. And
Andy Robertson got relegated with Hull.
Exactly. It is testament to Klopp what he can do with, on paper, average players and just bring them up
I think the difference is Jordan Henderson will work 5 times harder than anybody in Man City's midfield. Like Rodri, for example, he's not going to put as much passion and hard work into his performance as Jordan Henderson will for Liverpool. And that's the difference between them as midfielders.
Yeah, I don't think I'd swap anyone aside from maybe De Bruyne.
Yeah.
From those two midfields because they're just so different. Like David Silva is a Premier League legend, but I don't think he wouldn't be able to do what Jurgen Klopp wants him to do. And the same with like Henderson wouldn't maybe have the quality on the ball to play for Guardiola thing.
That's what I think is so interesting about obviously Man City and Liverpool is those two have been the top 2 teams in the league for 3 seasons now probably, and a lot of other teams try and sort of emulate what the champions have done in order to sort of build their own success. Yeah. Sort of when Conte won the league with a back 3, suddenly everyone was playing a back 3. Now Pep and Klopp have won the league with a 4-3-3. But it's so hard because the midfields are so different to each other. Yeah. It's just a completely different formula that's won the league. So I find it really interesting.
Yeah, because Pep is effectively playing 2 number 10s in a midfield 3, which no one would have done before. They would have said it's too attacking, but he makes it work.
Yeah, and Klopp plays with no number 10. He plays with 2 8s and a 6.
Yeah, exactly. He got rid of Coutinho because he didn't really fit anywhere in that team.
Oh, and Barca came in with 150 million.
Yeah, which persuasive, but yeah.
Right, I think that just about wraps up today, lads. Thank you so much for joining me.
No problem.
And thanks for everyone watching. We'll see you again. Goodbye.